Hello there again. This is David West, your plebeian philosopher. Today we're going to be talking about ARALAC, the alt-right, alt-left, and centrist approaches to the economy. Okay, so let's start with the authoritarian right wing, the alt-right approach to the economy. There's no regulations, no protections for consumers or workers. So it's basically, tyranny. There's no protection, and they operate off of privately owned monopolies. So of course, monopolies are abusive. You don't have any choice as a consumer or a worker. So there's no real choice in the labor market or in the consumer market under a monopoly. But what these authoritarian right-wing economies will try to do sometimes is they'll try and present the illusion of choice, which is you might have a monopoly that's conglomerate of many different companies to where you don't realize that all these companies are owned by the same monopolistic conglomerate. So you have the illusion of choice where you work and the illusion of choice where you shop, but in fact they're all owned by the same private entity. So a lot of these monopolies, these privately owned monopolies, will cite the economy of scale to justify their existence, which the economy of scale is a real thing. The economy of scale can improve the efficiency in production. But there's also an economy of corruption and an economy of suffering that also increases with these monopolies. And you get the doors start falling off your airplanes, the products start, shrinking in quality and increasing in prices. So it's bad. Monopoly is bad for everyone. Pretty much you just have to accept the abuse from these monopolies or be destroyed by them. They oppose regulations of all kinds. That's including government regulations and regulation by union, which is a private regulation, privately owned. If it's done right, it's a privately owned regulatory body, independent from both the business and the government that it's trying to regulate. All right, cool. Let's talk about the authoritarian left-wing economy. So where the authoritarian right-wing is made up of a privately owned monopoly, the authoritarian left-wing is made up of a publicly owned monopoly. It's a government monopoly. So in the alt-left, there is no consumer market. There is no labor market. It's all government handouts. So you don't have a choice. You don't have a choice in what you buy. You don't have a choice in where you work. It's all completely dictated by the government. And the communist authoritarian leftist state will force you into unions, which the communist unions do not work. And the reason being that the communist unions are not independent from the government, from their governments. So the communist union, basically there's one job provider in communism, and that's the government. That's the only job provider allowed. And the communist unions, they're not independent from their government. So they can't effectively regulate the government because they're just a branch of the government. In order for a regulatory body to be effective, it has to be independent from the entity it's trying to regulate. All right. Basically in the communist economy, you just have to accept the abuse or be destroyed because it's just another monopoly. You have no choice in the communist, the far left authoritarian monopoly. The publicly owned monopoly. So like the authoritarian right wing and the authoritarian left wing, they both present themselves as different types of monopolies in which you have no true choice in the matter. All right, let's talk about the centrist approach to the economy. The centrist approach to the economy, we try to break up monopolies wherever we see them. The ideal economy in the center is a small government that regulates small businesses, where small businesses can freely compete. With genuine competition, you get an increase in quality and a reduction in price. Without the competition, like with a monopoly, whether it's a far left publicly owned monopoly or a far right wing private monopoly, there's no competition. So everything falls apart. There's nothing to regulate. There's no competitive forces to regulate the markets. So they're bad, they're stale, they're stagnant, they're oppressive, they're abusive. So the centrist market, it has competition, small business competition. And if you're dealing with small businesses, they can be regulated with a small government. Okay, a small government can be agile, adaptable, responsible, public, aspect of the public sector. If it's small enough, it can respond to changes in the market. It can respond to changing conditions effectively. Let's talk about regulators in the centrist economy. Regulators are independent. They must be independent, so for them to function. So the government is an independent public regulator of business, and unions can also act as an independent regulator of business. Now, if we just had small businesses, we wouldn't need unions. You don't really need unions in small business. But as a business grows larger and larger, it becomes harder for even the business itself to manage and the business itself to properly regulate. And it becomes harder for the government to regulate. So unions become more and more important as businesses get larger and larger, and there's more corruption and there's more suffering intrinsic to those larger systems. Let's see. Yeah. All right. So the thing is with regulations, centrist regulations, they should not be a barrier to entry. So regulations should be minimal for small businesses, and they should be progressive. As the business gets bigger and bigger, you can add more regulations, and that larger business can handle it. They can handle it, and they need it more. So as regulations get bigger, you're going to need more regulations to prevent corruption and to reduce suffering. But small businesses, minimal regulations. You don't want regulations to be barriers to entry. So regulations should not be punitive to small businesses. They should be constructive. It should be about, hey, don't hurt your workers, don't hurt your customers, and we're going to help you. Like any necessary regulations, that are constructive. It's just presented as, hey, let's help these small businesses thrive. That's what a centrist government does, because a centrist government recognizes the importance of competition. Yeah, all right. So yeah, we covered progressive taxation, progressive regulation. So when it's small, minimal regulations, and as it gets bigger and bigger, you have more and more regulation and taxation to inhibit monopolistic growth. Because monopoly is the death of capitalism. It is the death of competition. You don't have capitalism without competition. All right. Well, if you like what you hear, then like and subscribe. And thank you for your time.